Hi everyone, welcome. I'm out here in my yard, and what you've got in front of you is my outdoor worm bag. It's really just a couple of these grow bags, one inside the other. I found that if I've got two of them stacked together, I don't get as much moisture loss through the walls of the container. The material stays a little bit more damp and cozy for the worms. I did realize when I last ran this setup in the same bag here, the same configuration, I had removed the outer bag, and it seemed to me like after doing so I lost a lot of moisture in the system pretty quickly, and that's fine towards the end of the life cycle of the bin, but in the beginning I think I'd like to preserve more moisture, so I'm going with a double bag, at least in the beginning. So the system was launched 13 days ago, and I didn't record it, but I did come in here at one point between then and now to throw a couple food scraps down here in the middle. It wasn't much, it was just a little kind of a token feeding. That was 8 days ago, so you know, it was launched 13 days ago. 5 days later the bin got a little bit of food, but today we're giving it a good substantial proper feeding, very similar to the kind of feedings you normally see me giving. It's coffee, used coffee, and a variety of different kitchen scraps. You got some cucumber, some cantaloupe rinds, some chunks of cabbage, some radishes, and other odds and ends in here. Pretty nice variety of different kitchen scraps. And to complement that nice generous portion of food, I've also got a nice generous portion of bedding, a whole bunch of dry leaves to throw in here. But before we get to feeding, I thought I would take care of a little bit of bookkeeping information here, because when I did launch the bin I did ask for everyone's feedback on how many worms everybody thought they saw in here when I launched it, and I got quite a wide range of estimates from people, ranging anywhere from 600 being the lowest estimate to values well over 300, 3,500 being the highest estimate. And when you average all those numbers together, what you end up with is a worm population of 1,831. So I wonder how close that is. I'm not going to start counting them one by one to either prove or disprove the estimate, but I'm just going to try to feed the bin accordingly based on that estimate. And in the future we might actually come back into this bin and add more to the population, but for now I think this is a pretty good population of 1,800. And I can already see some of the helper creatures that came along for the ride when we placed worms in here. Not only did we place worms in here at that time, but you could see there was a whole bunch of black soldier fly larvae that came along for the ride too. They're these maggot looking little thingies, and they're quite the composters. They really do a job on breaking stuff down. So besides the worms being in here, we've also got some black soldier flies occupying the space. And I don't know if the black soldier flies are going to keep coming back in here and trying to, you know, drop their eggs in here and so on and so forth. It's usually my outdoor compost barrel that gets the attention of the black soldier flies, and that's where they lay their eggs and all their babies are born. But you never know. I guess as black soldier flies emerge from this container, they might just decide to go ahead and lay their eggs back in here and keep their next generation growing in here as well. And that will only go until the end of the summer, because once the temperatures start to drop, the black soldier flies are unable to handle that sort of temperature. So even though the worms could probably handle some cold temperatures, the black soldier flies will only last into the autumn, and then they'll start petering off. I figured before we drop in, usually we just kind of open up the middle of my bins and drop into the center, but I'm also curious of how things are around the edges. Like I said earlier, I'm attempting to retain moisture in the system by having the double bag, because I did find that after I removed the second bag on the outside last time I ran this system, it did dry the outer edges out very quickly. So it does seem like the outer edges are still in pretty good shape, holding onto their moisture quite nicely. And I did actually come in here a couple days ago, so besides 8 days ago coming in here with some food for them, which was just a little bit of food, it really wasn't much, I did also come in here a couple days ago with the garden hose and give the entire system a nice spray down to try to boost up the moisture level in here. Not that it really needs it, as far as I could tell. The moisture level seems quite nice in here, so I just figured I'd give them a little treat. So I took off the top and I sprayed the hose in here to give them a little dose of water. But I don't really do that on a regular basis. For whatever reason, I just thought I would give them a little bit of a treat that day. So we've pretty much agitated the whole contents of the bin together, stirring everything around. And over time, this bin does get pretty big and deep, and it doesn't really lend itself to that sort of manipulation anymore. This is just an old partially eaten avocado seed, or mango seed, I'm sorry. Oops. It's getting there. So we threw all kinds of stuff in here, all kinds of stuff that didn't really break down the last time this worm bag ran. We threw in some fresh stuff. It's a good mix of various different stuff. And then we added an estimated 1,831 worms. So why don't we feed these little guys? I've had my fill. We got to see a number of worms zipping around inside this container. They all look pretty happy and healthy. And, you know, while there's still a good amount of food still remaining in here that they could probably take advantage of, I'm just going to be, you know, who I am, which is the generous worm farmer who always likes to make sure the worms are well fed. And I'm going to give them the food that I bought out here for them. But let's first take a certain portion of these leaves that I bought out. I always kind of like to lay down a little foundation of bedding underneath the spot where I feed, so that as the juices start to flow out of the foods that they're getting, it'll flow down into all that bedding material and make all that bedding material nice and tempting as far as a food item too later. So there's all kinds of good stuff in here. I'm sure they're going to appreciate this feeding. A nice variety. And I guess besides the bedding that they're getting with the leaves, they're also going to get the bedding of the coffee filters in here too. All kinds of good bedding materials for these little guys. Not to mention the leaves that are coming in on top of it. So the leaves, you know, we could throw in a little bit on top of the food too, but I like the leaves as sort of a top covering to give my bins a sort of a natural appearance for whatever reason. I just have that personal preference. Because when I come back into the bin, I take off the cover, and what's the first thing I see? I see like a nice natural looking pile of material. Leaves if possible. At least in the early days of a bin, that's how I like to do it. So I'm going to do the same here. Stick to my theme. Plenty of bedding with the food. And a nice natural top cover layering. It's sort of just a top dressing. Now the other thing I've got over here on the side that I didn't mention is my watering can, and I'm questioning whether I want to add any water. At first I thought I might want to, but after stirring through this material and checking out the contents and seeing what kind of shape the material is in, I'm questioning whether I want to add moisture or not. And you know what? Why don't we just throw a little bit in? What the heck, right? So let me grab my watering can here, and we'll give the whole top surface a little sprinkle. It's kind of hard to direct the the spout on this thing, so I'm just kind of walking around the whole thing here. I was standing in a spot that I was blocking the direct sunlight, so the one section of the bin wouldn't be brightly lit and this part would go dark, so I tried to stand here to make the light in the bin kind of even and easy to see. Now here's a fairly dark color black soldier fly larva, but yeah, you give it a little squeeze, you can tell it's empty already. So when they get really dark, they crawl to the top of the surface looking to get away from where all the feeding and stuff is, kind of a dry, safe space to be. And then the larva transforms into a fly, and then he creeps out of this little shell, or whatever you want to call it at this point. When it was a larva, it was just a skin, then it turns into sort of a cocoon in a way. But that one's already been spent. So the black soldier fly has already emerged from that one. And as you saw in the beginning, they're a little bit lighter when they're younger. So the ones we saw in the beginning are younger, and as they get older and older and closer to the point where they're going to pupate, they become darker and darker in color. So that's where we stand with my outdoor worm bag on day 13. and this is its first kind of formal feeding after it was launched. So hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please remember to leave me a thumbs up. That's always really appreciated. And if you haven't done so already, please also consider subscribing to the channel too. That's really appreciated as well. All right, everyone. Thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye now.